All right, well, this morning we're going to continue our journey to learn Jesus through the Gospel of Matthew. And today we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 9, starting at verse 9 and working through verse 17, which is this section that's sandwiched in the middle of a long string of healing stories. And that section itself is sandwiched between the Sermon on the Mount that ends in chapter 7 and the first commission of Jesus in chapter 10. So we find ourselves right in this little middle section here. Now, as we've seen plainly in the text, there's this interweaving theme of authority that runs through this section that we've been in, through chapter 8 and chapter 9. So when I say the word authority or authorities, what thoughts and images come to your mind? What comes to your mind when you hear those words? Now, in our current postmodern worldview, in our context, authority figures and institutions, we tend to hold them with a very high level of distrust and suspicion. And when we look at the social discussion in the last century or so, the conversation around authority and authorities is often filled with ideas of oppression or repression or abuse of human rights or something like that. And when we think of authorities, we often think of things like governments or judges or policemen, people who are ready to fine you or imprison you or worse. And in other countries, and even maybe some of the countries that some of you came from, I've heard some of the stories over the years, and it's pretty incredible. In other countries, authorities can sometimes mean soldiers who show up randomly at your door, day or night, to either abuse or to kill you or to kill your family. Now, maybe we think in our context, thankfully we don't have to deal with that, but maybe we think in our context of, when we think of authority or authorities, of all sorts of civil servants and bureaucrats who just weigh us down with endless and senseless laws and regulations that just make our life difficult. In all cases, authority is associated with people who have power to do what they want. Authority is associated with people who have power to do what they want. And ultimately, that's usually backed up with some sort of force or maybe even an army. If they want you to obey a speed limit, there's a policeman. And why do you obey the policeman? Ultimately, because he's got a pistol. Most people have the decency of respect, but when that isn't there, there's force. That's authority. That is, as we commonly think of it, people who have power to do what they want, and they're able to back it up. Authority means power, which means force, and which can even mean violence. In the first century context of our gospel story, authority was viewed much the same way, in that it is the power to do what we want, and it's often backed up by some military force. So the big question for the Jews that were unjustly oppressed by the Roman government, and for many people across the world today, including us, is this: how do we live under these authorities? How do we live under these kind of authorities? How do we walk and utilize our own authority that we wield? Now, for some in the first century, the solution, and I guess even now, for some the solution is separatist isolation. In terms of, we don't want to get caught up in a war, we don't want to get slaughtered, so what are we going to do? We're just going to isolate. We don't want to have anything to do with them, or as little as possible with those authorities. And for many others, the solution was a challenge of authority against authority, power against power, force against force, sword against sword. Thus we see in the times surrounding the New Testament, there's a history of revolt And on a more ongoing basis, there was this constant passive aggressive practice of just, sticking it to the man. And we can see evidence of these kinds of things, like when Jesus's followers start questioning him things on like taxation, like, what do you pay taxes to Caesar? I don't want to participate in that. And Jesus is like, well, there's this history of revolt and sticking it to the man. So when Jesus came demonstrating authority, like we've seen through chapter 8 and now here into chapter 9, when Jesus came demonstrating authority, the Romans questioned, is he going to use his authority to lead another revolt? And many of the Jews questioned, is he going to use his authority to lead us in another revolt? The point being is it's that this is this is just the way authority worked and authority was used. This is the mindset. This is the frame of thinking. So, as Matthew tells us the story of Jesus in the gospel, we see in Jesus a completely new kind of authority. An authority that is different than anything else in this world. We see a new and a different kind of power, a force that has nothing to do with violence, has everything to do with freedom and love. So to the great surprise of everyone, Jesus' actions were exceptionally effective and managed to turn the world upside down and continue to do so in our day. So this morning we get another window into this new kind of authority and power as Jesus calls Matthew to be his disciple. So let's turn to Matthew chapter 9, and we're going to start at verse 9. You read, as Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him. And Matthew arose and followed him. Well, Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house. Many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? On hearing this, Jesus said, it is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. Then John's disciples came and asked him, how is it that we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast? Jesus answered, how can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he is with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them. Then they will fast. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. Neither do people pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst. The wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour the new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved. So how many of you here have watched that TV series called The Chosen? Anyone? A few of you? Okay. Yeah, now, well, I normally don't find a lot of Christian-themed TV, terribly well done. It's usually too poorly done for me to enjoy, but I actually enjoy this series. There's a few things that I think that they do really well as they're trying to tell the Jesus story. And one of those things is this scene that we're discussing here this morning, where Jesus calls Matthew to follow him. Does anybody remember that scene and how they did that? Yeah, I like how they brought to life some of what we think probably was going on when that happened. Like, I think they capture well just the initial shock and horror and objection within all the other disciples when Jesus called Matthew. It's like, like, Jesus, what are you doing? Like, do you know, like, he's a tax collector. He's colluded with the economic extortion of the Romans. He collects taxes that pays for the oppression that we endure. Jesus, what are you doing? Yeah, I love that scene. And then even as the story plays out, they kind of, they show that there's a little bit of ongoing tension as they work through this, which I think makes that quite realistic. For his fellow Jews, Matthew's participation with Rome made him repugnant. He's a moral and spiritual infection to be quarantined in social isolation. And, kind of the thinking is, well, if we can't revolt against Rome right now, at least we can stick it to the man and ostracize his agents. So Matthew really, really had a hard time being rejected and reviled. And then Jesus shows up. With Jesus, everything is different. Jesus knows who Matthew is, with whom he is aligned, all he has done. Yet Jesus is not afraid of being defiled by associating with someone who is colluded with the oppressor. Rather, Jesus uses his authority to invite this outsider back into fellowship, into his inner circle, no less. Like, well, this is new. This is not the way things have been going. This is not the way things have been working. Wow, Jesus. And then in the next scene, we see Jesus is just going for broke here. Jesus and the disciples are now at a dinner party at Matthew's house, and this house is filled with all the wrong people. There's more tax collectors, more sinners. The new thing that Jesus is doing here, it's something worth celebrating. Well, as they say, every party has its poopers. Some of the Pharisees, they walk by, they see what's going on here. They see this dinner party, and they condemn Jesus and everybody present here. Like, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? What kind of teacher is this? What kind of guests are this? What kind of party is this? What's going on here? This is awful. And in that moment, the heart of these religious ones it's revealed. They believe that these lost ones are desperately far from God, and they have zero interest in attempting to bring them near. They only have interest in trying to single them out, trying to separate them and let them succumb to their sins. Jesus' response to these Pharisees reveals the heart of his mission from the Father and the target of his authority and power. The people Jesus came to call were the sinners. He never denies that the people he brought into fellowship were sinners. Rather, he clarifies that he came not to condemn, but to save sinners. His new way was not to isolate from the world, but rather to go out into the world. In quoting the prophet Hosea, who was revered by the Pharisees, Jesus reveals that it was not the sinners who were being restored by mercy that were the failures. Rather, the real failure was the desperate lack of compassion of these outwardly religious ones. Jesus uses his authority to speak truth to power. And when we look at it, he's not being an ass about it either. He's speaking truth to power. He's giving revelation to them, and he's giving an opportunity to repentance. After all, he came to save sinners, and part of what he's revealing is that we're all sinners. And he brings the truth, revelation, opportunity for repentance. In this moment, Jesus was revealing God's new work of an unprecedented outpouring of mercy upon everyone. An unprecedented outpouring of mercy. And this outpouring of mercy was greatly upstaging the temple and all of its sacrifices. What the prophet Hosea had had seen so long ago was now being born right in front of everyone's eyes. With our passage, it may seem odd that Matthew places the story of his calling by Jesus right in the middle of all of these healing stories. Like, what's going on? Is this just random? It's like, no. Why would he put it there? There's a reason. Because for Matthew, this moment was another healing miracle. He was fully aware of what he had done. His life, day after day, year after year, was one of being reviled and rejected. And then Jesus issues the call to him, follow me. The healing miracle was not only that someone like him would be called by Jesus. Matthew left everything behind. Wealth and opportunity. And when he walked away from this, there was no going back to tax collecting. And on the other side, there was no future prospects of a job either. The Romans wouldn't hire him back. And because he was a tax collector, none of his fellow Jews would hire him. He left everything behind. The text says that Matthew arose and followed him. Neat little feature here. In the original language, the word anastemi that we translate arose also carries a connotation of resurrection. Matthew arose. Matthew is subtly hinting that when Jesus used his authority to call him forward, it resulted in a resurrection in his life. The radical mercy of God brought him from death to life. Indeed, God is doing something new. Matthew left everything and he gained everything, all in the same moment. In our passage, the scene now shifts from the calling of Matthew to a question from the disciples of John the Baptist. And Jesus gives 3 replies to the question. Jesus' response in the scene is a continued explanation of what we witnessed in the previous scene with Matthew and the other welcome sinners. John's disciples ask, "How is it that we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus answered them, "How can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he was with them?" Jesus' answer is like, you can't mix a wedding with a funeral. When the bridegroom's there, it's time to celebrate. While Israel was waiting patiently for the rescue of God, mourning was an appropriate marker of that waiting. So they would hold fasts and times of mourning as they commemorated their tragic history and stayed in this posture of waiting for God to come and rescue. Now, this being the first Sunday of Advent, we also participate in this same type of waiting for his appearing as we remember his birth and as we look forward to his return. So what Jesus is revealing in his response is that the time of waiting was over and the time of fulfillment has come. Much like Jesus demonstrated with Matthew and friends, he authoritatively declares that it is time for celebration. God's mercy is coming in unprecedented ways for all people, including the unworthy, the unwashed, the unwelcome sinners, people like Matthew, people like you and me, people like all of our neighbors, all of our families. God's mercy is extending out to all. That new thing that God has promised has arrived. Next, Jesus moves to these images of new unshrunk cloth on old clothes and new wine in old wineskins. Jesus is showing how it's impossible to combine the new thing that he's doing with the old way, the old way that things used to be. When the new cloth shrinks, it'll tear the old clothes. The new wine will rupture the old wineskins. What Jesus was doing and revealing can't be contained within the old confines. The new and the old won't mix. And of course, the old wasn't bad. As you see with the wineskins, he's trying to preserve all the wine and all the wineskins. Matthew insists, though, Jesus came not to destroy the old, but rather to fulfill it. The new can be welcomed, and the abiding value of the old can be preserved. What God had done is good, but morning has broken on God's new day. The practices that were appropriate for the nighttime are no longer needed. The mercy of God that was once mediated through the temple and sacrifices of priests has now found a new and a more effective mediator in Jesus. Justice and mercy have been given an extended reach, a bigger heart and wider arms. The old modes of authority, worldly authority that seeks power against power, force against force. Jesus is revealing a new way. Now, even after the cross and the ascension, many people continued in the old ways. They didn't believe that this thing that Jesus is doing, it looks weak. I don't think it'll work. So what did they do? They continued to stick it to the man. They continued to revolt. You may remember, a little bit of history that the Jews staged another revolt in 66, which precipitated in the fall of Jerusalem in 70. It was an utter bloodbath. They got themselves horribly killed, expelled from Jerusalem. And still not learning the lesson, in AD 130, the revolt of Bar Kokhba. He was seen as a messianic figure. They thought he was the Messiah to gain independence. Like this Jesus guy, he didn't fight the war we were expecting. His ways? What? No way. So what did they do? They followed Bar Kokhba to gain independence again. And what happened? Utter devastation. In walking in the old ways, in the old paradigms of authority and power, they basically precipitated their own genocide. The Romans utterly slaughtered them, leaving few left. In fact, this slaughter was so bad it utterly changed the face of Judaism, utterly changed all of their expectations about Messiah. It was horrible. What appears as strength, we learn through history and through what Jesus taught. What appears as strength is exposed as weakness. And also in the life of Jesus, we see what appears as weakness is revealed as great strength. While many people didn't get it, a growing number of people did get it. And they did follow Jesus, and they did walk in his kind of authority. And so what happened? Through the first 3 centuries, even through times of some horrible persecution, the church grew and grew and grew and grew, and life was bubbling up all over the place. New creation bubbling up all over the place. New faith, new believers. The world was changing because the expansion of faith in Jesus and what it had done. So that by the time the 4th century rolls around, the empire, the great Roman Empire, can't even withstand it anymore. They acknowledge that all of this subversive kindness and mercy and service and love, all of the weakness, proved to be the strength that took over the empire. The authority of Jesus works because it didn't bring harm, it brought healing. What appeared weak was incredibly strong. So as Jesus demonstrates his authority to teach, to heal bodies, his authority over storms, authority over demons, authority to forgive sins, authority to call and to rescue sinners, we see that the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. At the cross, in complete weakness, Jesus exposes and disarms all such authorities and displays the mighty power of God. The authority of God is built upon a foundation of mercy and unrelenting love. And because of that, it is unstoppable. This new kind of authority that Jesus embodies, it is part of the good news. It is part of the gospel message. And this new kind of authority, he gives to us. He shares with us. And he tells us, walk in it. Follow me. Walk in it. Walk in this way. Change direction. Walk in this way. Because just like we saw in Matthew, people will arise. There will be a resurrection coming to people. New life, new creation will break forth. So our question today is, how do we follow in what Jesus does? How do we do what he did? In all of our situations, what does that look like right now? What would it look like to walk away from the strength of the world and to walk in the weakness of Jesus? How could we participate in his ways? How we interact with different people, especially the people where there's that thing inside of us that wants to play the Pharisee. How do we walk in the authority of Jesus to invite and to welcome the sinner, the dirty, the unwashed, the people with problems, to welcome in with open arms? How do we walk in that authority to be an agent of his forgiveness, to speak into the storms, to release freedom from those who are spiritually oppressed, to be the ones who call and to rescue? And that's the question that's before us today as we follow Jesus. And so we pray, Lord, in every moment, in every day, teach us how to follow you in this way.